we go for launch.
5,
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4,
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3,
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2,
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
Don't touch that dial.
I must offer to you a confession. I like movies that give me a fright. If the subject is horror, I've got to see more, or I won't be contented all night. You may call it my ghoulish obsession. It's a subject on which I get chatty. But the worst one, it seems, haunting all of my dreams, was the cockroach that ate Cincinnati. I've seen ghouls and hobgoblins and witches, and some moth-eaten werewolves with fangs. There were creatures that chattered and others that clattered, and Japanese monsters with bangs. Frankenstein gives me the shakes, and Count Dracula's driving me batty. But they're not on a par with the worst one by far, the cockroach that ate Cincinnati. Oh, he must have needed a seltzer. It's amazing how much he got down. For lunch he just chewed up a suburb or two, and for dinner he ate the whole town. Willard just sent me out laughing. I thought Ben looked a little bit ratty. Watch, sorry about that. But they're not half as bad as the worst scare I've had, the cockroach that ate Cincinnati. Oh, my heart nearly stopped, he will never be topped, the cockroach that ate Cincinnati. Olé!
Olé? That's dumb.
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your mission commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen. And on this episode of Planet 8, first of all, welcome back. We hope your holidays were good and you're all doing well, and you're ready for the new year, because we sure are. We have lots of good stuff coming your way. It's the original trilogy. It's the three of us, no guests this time around. On a somber note, this is an episode where we're going to remember Bob Burns, fanboy extraordinaire. Bob knows almost everybody who's done science fiction, horror, masks, animatronics. Famously, he had the animatronic skeleton from King Kong that all three of us got to see and take pictures with and whatnot. He had these great Halloween shows that he do at his home. Unfortunately, on December 12th, 2025, he went to be with his wife who'd gone before him. May he rest in peace. But I'm going to kick it over to Chief Bob. Why don't you go ahead and fill us all in on some of the background, who Bob was, and some of the things he had going on in his basement.
Yeah, Bob was an amazing monster kid. And for those who aren't familiar with the term monster kid, it's basically us old people growing up in like the 60s, 70s, And basically back then, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't any, you kind of felt like you were alone on an island. But you'd read Famous Monsters magazine, you'd watch the movies on Creature Features or Chiller Diller Matinee or whatever your local monster movie show was, whether it had a host or not. You'd be making those Aurora monster model kits, Universal Monsters and Godzilla, Rodan and Ghidorah, and was it The Prisoner and a few others. And then, you do things like cutting out pictures from TV Guide, there's a little picture from one of the movies that are showing, you cut them out, make a scrapbook. But anyway, some monster kids went on to do much bigger things than other monster kids did. Now, Bob Burns lived in Burbank, down in Southern California, and so he had access to a lot of the studios and things around there. And back then, studios didn't really consider props and things made for sets, things made for movies, as anything that'd be worth anything. So basically, it was like they'd make a movie, they'd throw them out, or they'd repurpose them for another movie, or they would, repurpose them for a TV show. So Bob would go around and he'd collect these things. And he was also doing things in his own right. He was helping out Paul Blaisdell, who we covered on the show at one point. Paul Blaisdell did a lot of the monsters for American International Pictures. So he did like the Saucermen from Invasion of the Saucermen. He did the She Creature. He did the monster from The Day the World Ended, and quite a few others. And Bob would actually go, because Paul Blaisdell would do these in his garage, and Bob didn't live too far away. He'd go help him out. So he kind of got in the business that way as well. And so, of course, he has a lot of Paul Blaisdell's throwaways, old props. And he started a whole collection, which technically they call it Bob's basement, but it was kind of like a room kind of towards the side of his house. And there were stairs to get down to it, but it wasn't like an actual underground basement or whatever. It was above ground. And going to it was absolutely amazing. If you're watching us on YouTube, I put together a montage that opened the episode, which had pictures that Keith and I took when we visited Bob's basement. And you can see all the amazing props and things that he had. I think most famously, he has, as Larry mentioned, the armature from King Kong, as well as Mighty Joe Young. He's got the time machine, the original time machine there. And God, you go in there and you trip on things or stumble upon things, and it's almost like you're discovering as you're walking through this big, massive room of props. And I remember just to the right of the time machine that he had a big glass case. And inside this glass case, he had one of the Zante Misfits. And I think it was Hua Chang donated it to him. And so I'm like, ooh, man, Zante Misfit. So I'm leaning over, taking pictures of it. I took a couple steps back and my heel hit something. What is that? I turned around and on the floor was like this 6-foot-long model of the Sea View from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, like one of the actual shooting props from the show.
Wow.
And then, he had a mannequin hanging from the ceiling, which was Commander Cody, the Rocket Man from the old serials. And it was the leather jacket. He had on the leather jacket and the helmet that looked like a bullet. And of course, he had his belt with the controls, like a little knob that you could turn it to up, down, and I think off. But he had the space capsule from Planet of the Apes that crashed at the beginning of the movie. He had the model of that. He had, you want to talk about contrasts. I looked on the floor. He had a helmet from Rollerball, and right next to it, he had the helmet from Robot Monster. So you talk about two ends of the spectrum there. He had the original gates. They were only like, if you're watching, about this big. If you're listening, probably about a foot wide and half a foot tall. The gates from King Kong, from the wall that he crashes through, and just so many things. It's just hard to describe like every single thing he had here. But the thing was, Bob was very generous, and he would all you had to do is call him up. Hey, I'm going to be in LA. Can I come by? And he'd say, sure. And you can go by and you can check things out, and he'd tell you stories about everything. And I know when Keith and I first went, and he had the armatures from Kong and Mighty Joe Young up on his mantle, and we're taking pictures of them. And he says, well, let me put them on the table. You can get a better shot. Oh, okay. So he puts them on the table, taking more shots. And then he goes, here, you want to hold it? And he hands me Kong. And I'm like, oh my God, if I drop this, I am so screwed. But he was like, don't worry, it's all metal. You can't break it. I'm like, oh, okay. So put it down. And by the time we were done, Keith and I were sitting there like a couple little kids posing Kong and Mighty Joe Young in little fighting poses and making them, square off and all that stuff. So, yeah. But he was like that. He was very, very generous with his time, very generous with his items. Even if they were fragile, he wouldn't mind if you picked it up. I was actually holding the flying saucer from Invasion of the Saucer Men. I was holding one of the Saucer Men masks or whatever. At the time, he was doing the Halloween shows, which really inspired me to start totally decorating the houses for Halloween and doing all that. And when we were there, he had just had a meeting with some people, and he was doing his last Halloween show, and it was on the Thing from Another World. And he had all the plans laid out on a table, and he was showing us, this is where people are going to walk in, and this is what they're going to see as they go along, and this and all that. And it was just amazing. But yeah, he's done audio commentaries on DVDs. He did audio commentaries for Revenge of the Creature, Creature Walks Among Us, War of the Worlds, quite a few of the classic films. I was looking at a list on Wikipedia, and he had told us when we were there that he had just finished recording an audio commentary for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I didn't see it listed, but I'll have to look on the DVD and see if he's on there. But yeah, and he did a magazine, famous, was it Fantastic Monsters of Filmland? He did a lot of appearances, shows, things like that. When Peter Jackson premiered his King Kong, he invited Bob and his wife Kathy to come out and had him bring the armature, the Kong armature. So during the premiere of the movie, while they're sitting there watching the movie, Peter Jackson was holding the armature through the whole film. So yeah, now, everybody's worried. Hey, what's going to happen with Bob's collection now that he's gone? And I've been assured that Greg Nicotero is basically overseeing everything right now. So he's also like executor of the will. There is a will that's going to say who gets what and where things go, and Greg Nicotero is in charge of that right now. So, yeah, this nicest guy you ever want to meet. Very generous, very much a monster kid, and it was a blast every time we'd go there. He was great.
Yeah, they would have panels a few times that Walker and I went to Monsterpalooza, and as soon as we saw Bob was on a panel, we were gonna be at that panel. Or if he was at a table, he and his wife Kathy would go to those shows year after year after year. And he had such great stories about the industry and, people that he wasn't dropping names. He would just tell stories, and it just so happened that, you know, so and so was, part of that story. And, he helped so many special effects people get their foot in the door. That Kong armature was fantastic. It was Kong's cinematic anniversary. I forget, was it 70 years or something, Walker?
It was 80 years. That was
80.
like my favorite memory from any of the Monster Paloozas we went to back in 2013. Yeah, and they did a panel for Kong's 80th, and Bob was there, and they had a great panel. But then towards the end of the panel, they wheeled in this big birthday cake for Kong,
Banana
and
cake.
then banana. It was yellow. I remember. Yeah. And then, yeah, Bob says, well, if anybody wants to come up and, get their picture taken with the armature, and it was just like our Bob said, just such generosity of spirit, because you have this, what's to us a priceless artifact.
Right.
And he's so willing to let all of us come up. And I mean, that picture I took with it is one of my favorite pictures, because it was just such a great moment. And everybody there was so happy. And, for him to let all of us partake in that, it was just such a wonderful moment.
Absolutely. And he played a gorilla.
Yeah.
Costume.
Kogar.
Tracy was the name of the girl.
Well, when he was on the
On
Ghostbusters.
yeah.
Right.
But he was
Ghostbusters
Kogar.
TV show. This is nothing
The real
to do with Bill
Ghostbuster.
Murray and all that. This is
Yeah,
long before.
he was Kogar and other things. And I
Kogar.
tried to find my Kogar model kit that they sold at one of the Monster Paloozas, but it's in the garage somewhere. So
Well,
I'll have to.
that also inspired Rick Baker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because Rick Baker met Bob Burns when he was like 13 years old. Rick Baker was 13, not Bob.
Right.
And Dennis Muren met Bob when he was like 18.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't just like Bob knew all these industry people. He actually inspired some of these industry people.
Right.
He was good friends with, the director of American Werewolf in London, John
Landis.
Yeah.
John Landis.
Well, he has one of the werewolves, or he did.
That was Rick Baker gave him that. Rick Baker gave him a bunch of props and things.
Yeah.
He gave him a bunch of the heads from Star Wars.
Mm.
The cantina scene. And
He would tell such great stories. Like Bob, you mentioned the time machine. This is the original time machine, with the wheel and the.
Yeah.
And I don't remember where but a friend called and said, "Hey, this person's selling the time machine," and it was in disrepair. It really needed a lot of work. But sure enough, Bob went out there with some friends in a pickup truck and got the thing, and they worked on refurbishing and just throwing love and attention back into that thing, and it actually worked again. The wheel, it didn't travel through time, kids, but
I didn't see any Morlocks when I went.
The lights and stuff would spin up and flash.
Yeah, it was funny because I went to the Dickens Fair out at the Cow Palace this year, and it's the second time I've seen this. But there's a guy there that has a replica of the time machine. He lets you sit in it and take pictures and all that. And I mentioned to him, I go, yeah, I saw the one that Bob Burns has, the original one down in Burbank. He's like, I've always wanted to see that. You got to see Bob Burns, And he was just like a little kid. And we were just like talking, about Bob Burns and Time Machine and all that. And it was,
let me say too, I'm very happy that Greg Nicotero is involved. One of the travesties was Forrest J. Ackerman's estate, and all the treasures that Uncle Forey had in his possession. And one of the things that kind of gave me anxiety at that Monsterpalooza wasn't holding the Kong armature because I wasn't going to drop it, but there were no security guards or someone could have like walked out with that thing. I
I
mean,
don't even know if he had an alarm on the basement. It's like he was very trusting, but
so many people would go into Forrest J. Ackerman's collection and he'd have like this like one of a kind, book or something, and they'd borrow it because he's like, yeah, go ahead. They'd make a photocopy of the cover and put like a little, blank, if you will, in its place because as they started going through Forey's collection, it's like, what is this? So I was just like, I hope nobody.
yeah, Bob Burns was telling us about that when we were over there because he was the one that was going over to authenticate everything. This was when Forey was in the hospital, and
Right.
he started kind of selling off his collection to pay for his medical bills.
Mhm.
And Bob went over to kind of authenticate things and all that. And yeah, there were a number of one sheets, lobby cards, stills, posters, and he would excuse me, nothing to sneeze at. He would loan them out to people doing books or magazines or whatever, and they'd return copies.
Yeah, that just.
And so Bob would go over and he'd look at things and go, this isn't the original lobby card. This is a copy of it,
Yeah.
So yeah, they took advantage that way. And Forey, like Bob, always had tours of the Acker Mansion. I never made it to the Acker Mansion. I made it to like the Acker condo after after the collection was pared down. But people would, stash things as they walked through the Acker Mansion, and obviously they couldn't take big things, but a lot of the smaller items all walked out that way.
I know we're talking about Bob, but a friend of the show, Streffen, November Fire, has a great DVD of the Acker Mansion. So if you guys go to novemberfire.com, you can get a hold of it. I don't think they've done anything with Bob's basement yet, video wise. I mean, there's like YouTube stuff out there and people have like pictures and whatnot, but
well, there is the DVD Beast Wishes, which
there is Beast Wishes.
Friend of the show, Frank Dietz, who will be on later in this episode,
what?
Produced and directed this with his partner Trish Geiger. And from what he tells me, I have this DVD, but when he tells me the Blu-ray came out last week. So
there you go.
You can look up the Blu-ray of Beast Wishes. The movie is the same, just better quality. And he says there's some cool extra extras that are not on the DVD on it.
Nice.
So that's definitely if you want to know more about Bob, and I'll talk about that later. But that's definitely something to look up. And there's a lot of shots of the collection in there, and people like Greg Nicotero and others talking about visiting there and going to the Bob's basement.
One of the Monsterpaloozas, he was also talking about his Halloween haunts. He'd transform a good portion of his home, at least the front part, side and whatnot, into, like Bob said, it was the thing from another world, and they had video of it. It was a Creature from the Black Lagoon.
They did The Exorcist.
He talked about the Alien film back in '79, and 20th Century Fox sends these trucks with like paneling from the film, and it's like, this is actual like movie pieces, used in that film, and they brought it over to Bob, and he set up his Alien, haunt for that year.
Do you know who was the main actor in that attraction and took everyone through it? Walter Koenig.
You're not. Who was that?
Walter Koenig.
Walter Koenig. Chekhov. God love.
It's not like he had to go and do voice work for the cartoon or anything. So he had some. He had some extra time. So yeah, he was a person in that.
Speaking of Bob's Halloween shows, I did want to do a shout out to Starlog. And issue 18, which I am,
Wow.
if you're watching on YouTube, I'm trying to show
Yes.
my fake background here. Issue 18, and this is where I first heard of Bob, because they did a tremendous article in this issue on his Halloween shows. And I don't think he had done the Alien show yet, because I
think the
perused
Alien
through-
one, I think, was his first show.
When I read this, they talked about how he started out. The very first one was a Jekyll and Hyde. Then he did a crashed flying saucer. Then he moved on to, let's see, a version of, it wasn't it was Forbidden Planet with the id monster.
Nice.
And then they talk about the Exorcist, which was a real big, pulled in a lot of crowds when they did the Exorcist. And Kathy, they had two women spelling each other in the role of
Reagan?
possessed. Yeah. So Kathy Burns, his wife, did it along with Elaine Baker, who I think it was Rick Baker's wife at the time. So yeah, I think and they did a War of the Worlds one. So I know Starlog also, and a Time Machine one. There's pictures in here from the Time Machine one. And I think they did a follow-up article, and that's where they showed the Alien one. So I think that might have been a couple years later. So what year this? Yeah, this was December 1978. So we didn't have Alien just yet. So but I remember seeing the article and was like, hey, that's Chekhov. So
Walter.
yeah, those shows, man, I would have loved to. I mean, I've seen some video of those shows, but I would have loved to have been there in person, because you can just see the amount of effort everybody put into it. He got all these great effects people to come, and
they'd come and volunteer their time.
But Bob was able to bring them all together. He was like a nexus for all these people to coalesce around and put their efforts together.
Absolutely. In his own right, Walter Koenig does have a nice little collection. Not a lot of movie stuff, but all these different kinds of fanboy items. There's a video that I saw on YouTube. I can't remember who interviewed him, but it was a great interview, and he shared a lot of his collections in it. Anyway,
Collection of what?
To Bob.
Doesn't he have like a bunch of what are those books called? Those little
the mini
golden books, or
no golden? Yeah, they're the little half-size books that kids used to get back in the day. Like
there's
even
like Little Orphan
us.
Annie, and
yeah.
I still have one.
Ha!
I've got Tarzan.
But he has like a ton of them.
Yeah.
It's like his just I was going to say a word I'm not supposed to say on our podcast. He has a blank ton of them.
A buttload?
That too.
Buttload. It's a great interview. It's out there. Just, Walter interview collectibles. You're lucky, Bob. Kieran and I had planned to go to the Acker Mansion. Didn't happen. And then Bob's basement, and that didn't happen. But I'm glad you got to go.
The cool thing about Bob's basement is it was all props. Forey was more memorabilia.
Mm-hmm.
He had the armature for the Brontosaurus from King Kong from King Kong. He had a few other props, but a lot of his stuff was more memorabilia and magazines, posters, books, that kind of thing. So
nice.
But yeah, Bob had all the big cool stuff.
Well, and Bob actually did, not to say anything against Forey, but Bob did some work on films and did some special effects work. So he had, a deep connection to the stuff, other than just being a collector. He had worked in film.
Yeah. Yeah, he was, like I say, he was in the right place at the right time and in the right period because, when I think it was his first or second time we were there, he said, yeah, people used to stop by here all the time and drop off props and things. He goes, now they come and drop off like a CD-ROM. Because everything's, keyboards and mice. So, just the age of, and really seeing these things, you kind of realize the artistry and the work that goes into making a prop for screen. And it's also interesting that you can see maybe it looks great on screen, but when you see it in person, it's not quite as detailed as you would think it would be. Mm-hmm. But it was good enough to look good on screen. It's kind of like when I went to ILM, and they had the boat from Star Trek 4, and or was it 5? The fishing boat.
Oh, yeah,
that was 4.
4, yeah, because it's a whaling boat. But yeah, it was like all really nice and detailed on one side, and then the other side was just blank because they weren't shooting it from that side. So it wasn't like a full model. It was just they only did the detail on the side that they were going to be shooting. So yeah, there's a lot of that kind of thing. But yeah. Of course, I look for the Japanese stuff. He did have a head of Ghidra, not the neck, just the head. It was in the case next to the Zanti Misfit.
Wow.
And the Wolfman cane, the head for the Wolfman cane that John Barrymore uses to kill Lawrence Talbot at the end, it's rubber.
Yeah.
So, he's like, it was all shiny and silver on the screen, but in real life, it's like a rubber cane head. So, it's just amazing to discover things like that. He had the saucer from Day the Earth Stood Still hanging from the ceiling, but it had like these extra like nodules and stuff on it. And he said, "Oh yeah, that was reused in another film or a TV show or something, and they added details to it." But yeah, it was original. But
that's cool.
Very, very cool stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, why don't we share with our viewers, and like we all said, if you're not watching on YouTube, if you're listening, God love you. Thank you for listening to the podcast. But if you haven't visited YouTube, you're missing out on, especially Bob has some things he's going to share. Every episode we share something. So go to YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, share our YouTube page with your friends. And Bob, I think you talked to speaking of friends, about Bob.
Yeah, we've got some tributes from some friends of the show. One being Frank Dietz, who we did a whole episode with.
Yep.
Another being Frank Woodward, who did the documentary Men in Suits, and he's worked on other things as well. And then we have my Sci-Fi Japan Godzilla Fest partner, Keith Aiken. Keith and I talk a little bit about our visits to Bob, and Keith worked on the Thing from Another World Halloween setup, so he talks about that a little bit as well. So we'll cue those up, and we'll be back after this.
Okay. I was thinking about this a lot after Bob passed. They tell you not to meet your heroes because you're always going to be disappointed when you finally meet them. Bob was the absolute opposite of that. I grew up watching the Ghostbusters. I loved Tracy the gorilla. That was like the fact that I would meet the guy that played Tracy, let alone get to hang out with him and direct him even in a little short. That's a Monster Kid fantasy. And he was just such a welcoming, gentle, warm person who, when he found out that you and he loved the same things, you could talk for hours. He was what you want fandom to be. Nowadays people get a little snarky. If I like this, but you don't like the same thing I like, and people can get a little bit combative. But Bob had opinions, but Bob loved fellow Monster Kids, and that also made an impression on me. It really made me love the guy more. He was the last of a kind, and he will be missed.
All right.
Do my 5 minutes.
that was great. Let me.
I have little anecdotes that I could share. I'll share one. Okay, I think I could tell this pretty fast.
Okay.
If you want to use it.
Sure.
So I was, like many of us who got to know Bob, we're fortunate enough to get invited to see the basement and go see the collection. And the basement was more like a back room with some stairs going into his main house, and so there was some levels and steps that you have to navigate while also trying not to step on the time machine or something precious. So Bob usually when I would go over, Bob would sit at a chair in kind of the center of the room while you wander around and ask him questions. Oh, where did this come from? Where did this come from? And I walked in and I saw a Frankenstein monster's head on the wall that I swore was Bela Lugosi from Ghost of Frankenstein, which seemed odd because Bob was an original Boris and very much a friend of Glenn Strange. So he had those Frankenstein monsters on the wall all over the place. I said, Bob, what is this Bela Lugosi head doing here? When did you get that? He goes, that's not Bela Lugosi, that's Glenn Strange. I said, Bob, no, seriously. And I was challenging Bob in his own basement. And the powers of the room took their vengeance on me for questioning him, because I took a step towards that head and I missed the step and went down, nothing but air, straight down on the ground. And I was like, yeah, you're right, Bob. That's Glenn Strange. I'm not going to question you again.
Right, the film gods got you.
The film gods reached out and smote me.
Hi, I'm Frank Dietz. I was a longtime friend of Bob Burns and Kathy Burns. And it's funny, I don't know what I could say about Bob that hasn't already been said by like literally thousands of people. But I got to know Bob very, very well because once we met, anybody who loves the genre of horror and science fiction and so forth, if you meet Bob immediately is your friend. And that was just one of the wonderful things about him and Kathy, is that they basically embraced everybody. And I was lucky enough to, just by coincidence, happen to get a house that was right around the corner from Bob's house. And it was funny because my wife called me up and said, you have to go check out this house. I think that we can get it. And I pulled up to this house and I looked around. I was like, this is really familiar. Like, who lives around here? And I realized that Bob and Kathy I literally could have thrown a rock and hit their backyard from the house that I was going to now take. But being that close to Bob, geographically as well as personally, it gave us a lot of opportunity to spend time together and really become, to a lot of people, Bob was this guy who they first read about in Starlog magazine, the guy who put on these amazing Halloween shows, and he had all these cool props in his basement and everything like that. And all of that was true. But it's funny, like after a while, once I got over just sort of the fanboy part of meeting Bob, then he was just Bob and Kathy was Kathy, and they were like family. to me. In fact, they were about as close to second parents as I could ever hope for. And the marvelous thing about them was that one of the many marvelous things about them was that they really encouraged creativity. And that was, and Kathy, even more so than Bob, I think, was the one who was always pushing people like myself and people like Rick Baker and and Dennis Murin and all these other amazing people that came up within the ranks of the Burns the Burns army. Um, they really wanted everyone to expand the boundaries of their creativity. So they were always pushing a little bit. And of course, anytime you did anything, right, Bob would always react the same way, and it was very sincere. It wasn't fake, but it was always something along the lines of, "Oh wow, look at that! Look at that! That is the coolest thing I've ever seen." And wait till Kathy sees this, right? And he'd go on and on and on, and it was lovely because he meant it. He meant every word of it. He was that kind of person, and they were also extremely generous, with their time, with their collection. I mean, all you had to do if you wanted to see the Time Machine or see King Kong or any of the other marvels that he had and that they had in that basement of theirs, all you had to do was ask. Say if you called him up and said, "Hey, I'm in LA for the next 3 days. Could I come by the museum?" And unless they were going to be out of town or something, they'd be like, "Absolutely, come on over and let me show you this and let me show you that." Now, in later years, Bob had this one chair in the museum that was sort of his throne he sat in, right? And as it became harder for him to walk around, and believe me, that museum was not a place that you wanted to trip or accidentally step on something. We used to laugh that, like, if you were walking through the museum and you took a step and you heard everybody would freeze. It was like, what historical important artifact did I just break on the floor of Bob's basement, right? But Kathy then would lead the tour essentially, and so she'd take you through all the way around it and point out the things that were certainly the things that were historically important, like the aforementioned King Kong armature, the Mighty Joe Young armature, the Time Machine, the Solico from Alien, all the alien heads, the stuff that Rick Baker created for Star Wars, the cantina scene. I mean, and it was just like, I think I must have gone there. I can't even guess how many times I was in the basement, but it seemed like every time I would go, suddenly see in a corner somewhere something that, like, I hadn't noticed before, and I was like, is this real? And I was, oh yeah, so and so gave me that like a long time ago or whatever, and so it was a constant exploration into fantasy and cinematic artifacts, and Bob had a story for every single piece in that museum, like where it came from, what movie is it from, what TV show is it from, who made it. That was something that he, that would make the most sense, right? Because like I said, they are always encouraging people to be as creative as possible. So of course, when he's talking about a piece, he's going to mention who made it, and what went into making it, and then how he acquired it, which very often was just, well, he gave it to me. He said I could have it, right? But Bob always considered him a curator of this wonderful museum, um, and he was very protective of it, but at the same time, he was very generous with it. Like I said, if you wanted to see it, just ask, and you could come over and see it. Um, and and then the Halloween shows, most of us monster kids had read about in that very famous Starlog 71 or whatever the issue was. I can't remember the issue number now, but where they talked about his Halloween shows that they would do every year, and they had like all the greatest people working on them, like Rick Baker and Dennis Murin, and so forth. And they did they did one year. Alien was the theme of the show, and he actually got Walter Koenig from Star Trek to appear in the little film that they made of it. But these people would these shows were so famous in L.A. that people would line up all the way up the street and around the corner to be able to go and watch these little shows that they would put on. They did A Creature from the Black Lagoon. I think that was the last one until 20 years later. And Bill Malone, the director Bill Malone, had built a creature suit for this thing that was perfect. It was beautiful. Bill almost died actually when because he was in the suit, and he was supposed to dive under the water and then come up and scare people, and I guess the fin on the back of the creature suit got caught on this one piece of the set, and he couldn't go backwards or forwards, and he was like, oh my God, I'm drowning here. But luckily that didn't happen. He was able to wrangle himself free. But like, everybody wanted to work on it. Everybody wanted to be some kind of part of it. Bob used to say that if you'd never picked up a hammer before, you'd come in to work on the show as an amateur and leave as an expert. I don't know. Expert might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but the point being that you learned about things when you worked on on these shows. And they were just marvelous. They would bring in like 12 people at a time, and it would be like a little show. It would be like a little skit where you get walked through the set, and you'd have surprises here and there and so forth. And I mean, way beyond the usual kind of Halloween fright house that you'd see in most cities. Because he had real Hollywood makeup artists and effects guys working on it. I was really lucky in the Creature Show was the last one they did in 1982. They didn't do one for 20 years. And Greg Nicotero suggested that, what if we did one more show just for old times? And they decided to do The Thing from Another World. And DC Fontana, the head writer on the original Star Trek, wrote the script. And I was very lucky. I got to play Captain Hendry. And so basically, I got to lead the spectators through the set, acting all cool and tough and very Kenneth Tobey-esque. And it was mind blowing how cool the sets were. And Bob took great pride in this. And then, Kathy would be making a huge pot of chili for everybody, and it was like a family. It was so sweet and endearing. And it was kind of, very bittersweet when that last show, that Thing show, ended. We did it for 6 nights, by the way, and there were 20 performances a night. So it was a lot. I remember saying to there was some talk that we were going to do one more, and it was going to be based on Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And Kevin McCarthy was a dear friend of mine, and I was telling him about it. I said, yeah, we do it for 6 nights, and we do 20 performances a night. And he just sat back and he just goes, well, I don't think I could do 20 performances a night. I was like, no, Kevin, you don't have to be in it. It's okay, right? And the people that would show up for these shows, it was like every time a new group came in that I was supposed to lead through the little play, I'd be like, oh wow, Guillermo del Toro's here, or oh look, there's Rob Zombie, there's John Landis, there's it brought in not very famous people as well as just the fans and the people who lived in Burbank and who had been hearing about these shows forever. Um, and yeah, we never did another one after that. It was fun to talk about, but it became logistically difficult with the city of Burbank. Things had changed since 1992, and but I will cherish those memories forever. And luckily, it was committed to the little show was committed to film, so I'll always have that to be able to watch and remember and just remembering what special people they were. And they really were. Like anybody who met them would tell you, like, oh my God, he's the nicest guy. They're the nicest couple. And it was always very sincere. It was always there was no phoniness about it. It was they just really cared, and they cared about each other so much. Oh my gosh, like that is a love story for the ages, and it's part of the reason that Trish Geiger and I made our documentary Beast Wishes, all about Bob and Kathy, and it we talk about the Halloween shows and we talk about the collection and Bob, all the stuff but that Bob did growing up, and but in the end, we realized what we had was really a love story between these two people that found each other when they were very young and stayed together for 60 years, I think, right up until Kathy passed away. So I would just have to say that, like, my life is ultimately better for having known and been friends with Bob and Kathy Burns. And I couldn't ask for anything more.
All right, so I am here with my Sci-Fi Japan partner and Godzilla Fest partner, Keith Aiken, longtime friend. And the first time I actually went to Bob's basement, it was with Keith. And yeah, we had a couple pretty cool visits over there.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd met Bob. I knew of him, but it was the first time, and I remember I was living in LA working for Sony at the time, and you came down for a visit, and you're like had arranged with Bob to visit to his place, so I was happy to tag along. And I'd heard he'd had the amazing collection, but I remember just being blown away when he brought out the armatures for King Kong, and the second one that they used for both Son of Kong and Mighty Joe Young.
Yeah.
And the thing I remember first was just being, in awe of being in, the same room as those things that I had grown up watching over and over again on TV and everything. And then thinking too that, again, just showing Bob's generosity and everything that, if I had those things, they'd be in a case, locked away, or whatever, or in a safe.
Well, I mean, that was the thing when he let us hold them.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that was saying.
We were worried about, oh man, if I break this thing, but he's like, no, they're all metal. There's nothing you can break. So
that was the awesome thing. Yeah, I mean, because you think again of something from 1933, and you think of like old movie props, and they're all broken down, and if you touch them, they're going to fall apart.
Right.
And those things were made to last. It seems like forever. So I remember he was like, "Yeah, hold them. You can pose them. You can do whatever you want." And I remember at one point, you and Bob were having a conversation, and I was sitting at a table, and I was doing little movements of Kong and Mighty, and the other armature, and just the fact that you're going like, I'm doing the same movements like Will O'Brien did, 80 years ago.
But then we were sitting there like
and
two little kids posing on.
Yeah, I mean, who would ever think you get the chance to do something like that?
Yeah.
and then obviously the tour of the basement itself.
Yeah. Well, the one thing about the armatures too, the one thing I remember is, and he pointed out that Kong's jaw, you would just move it around.
Yeah.
But with Mighty Joe Young, it had a screw that went up into the jaw where you would turn it to make the jaw open, different.
Yeah, so it would lock in place for the photography. Yeah. You know, and I remember they were fairly big, and and heavy because they were just solid metal,
Plus, they're on those wooden bases.
Yes, and they were on the wooden base. But I mean, just the fact you're holding the King Kong in your hands, one that's in the movie, not a replica, not one from a sequel, or the original King Kong, and then and I love those movies growing up. I'd watch King Kong and Son of Kong and Mighty Joe Young anytime they were on TV. So I mean, it's just, so I remember just loving that. And then obviously, it said going down to the basement, where his full display was, and just seeing all the amazing stuff. I remember the rubber head for the cane from, the Wolfman.
Yeah.
And he had Glenn Strange's Frankenstein boots from Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. There was like a Nautilus from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He had a ton of stuff from Rick Baker. And I remember, like I said, I don't know what other people have talked about, so I'm hopefully not repeating too much. But I remember Cantina creatures, from Star Wars. I mean, so your childhood, you're face to face with the creatures from the Cantina in Star Wars.
Well, you want to talk about two like polar opposites that sat together. He had the helmet from Rollerball.
Oh, yeah.
And right next to it was the helmet from Robot Monster.
So you're right. Pure violence and pure camp. Side by side. I remember he had a ton of stuff from Alien.
Yeah.
And I don't know if other people have spoken about this or how common the knowledge is, but that, Bob's background working in the special effects industry and doing television and things like that, he would do the Halloween shows, which I don't know if it's been a topic. But he started doing those in the 70s, and he reached out because the first one they wanted to do was an alien themed one. Mm-hmm. And he contacted some people he knew at 20th Century Fox and asked if they had any props or, backgrounds, anything that they could use to help with this Halloween show. And real quick to explain further, like Bob would do these at his house. He had a long driveway alongside his house, and they would basically build a whole like attraction there, and it was open to the public. And so he reached out to Fox about this, and Fox said, "We have a lot of stuff we were going to throw away. You're welcome to it." And he said they told him to be at home at a certain time during the week, so he had to take a day off from work. And he said it was like 2 or 3 giant 18-wheelers showed up. He started unloading stuff, and it was like the outside of the Nostromo, walls from the inside of the ship, alien heads, the spacesuit helmets, face huggers.
Collector's dream, man.
Yeah, he had a whole like toolkit that you could open up that had all these like mechanical tools, but I think are barely seen in the movie. But he said he gave all the stuff, so they were able to do an amazing show, and that led to him doing it as a regular thing for several years. But I think that was the one that he'd had some pieces before that really kicked things off.
Right.
And I think because Fox gave him the stuff for Alien, every time they did a new movie, they would give him stuff. So he had, I think, alien heads, actual movie alien heads, all the way up through at least Alien versus Predator.
Yeah.
And do you remember the cable controlled Queen? You had that full size alien Queen head.
Oh yeah.
Which was on these cable controls with these 2 notches, and you would do like this, and the head would turn, and the jaw would open. It would do all these things. Yeah. And I remember we got to play with that, which was just like the funniest thing. Again, you're like manipulating this full size alien, and he talked about with that when they did Alien Resurrection, they said they could borrow it back. Fox did. Yeah. So he loaned it to them, and they refurbished it, but they also painted it brown because for whatever reason it was brown in that movie. Right. Those few shots you just see the close up of its head. So he goes, I got it back, and they fixed it, but now it's not black anymore. It's brown. But yeah, he would do stuff like that. I remember he also had the time machine from the George Powell film.
Yeah.
And the story for that was he and Kathy had bid on it at an auction and lost out. And then a few years later, they came across it at a carnival. They had it like as a carnival attraction, and it had like been really mishandled. And so they were able to buy it and refurbish it. And so that's another memory I have is, sitting in the time machine and the wheel would spin behind you and things like,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was basically like walking into your childhood, And
Well, that's the thing, because you would just like, you'd walk through and you'd be focused on one thing, and then you look next to it or you look behind you, and there's something even more awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
he had that creature suit that it wasn't an original, but was pulled off the original molds.
Yeah, that was gorgeous. I remember it's like
because I read somewhere one of the Halloween shows was Creature from the Black Lagoon, and somebody had worn the suit and actually was supposed to dive underwater and come out to scare people, but the back fin got caught. The guy was stuck underwater and couldn't get out, and he finally
drowned
got his way out. But yeah.
It was just amazing. You could look around because they had the way it was. The basement was something. It was a very long, like rectangular room, and they had the like display counter in the middle, and then basically the entire perimeter was just amazing stuff going all the way up to the stairs, up to the main house and everything. So I remember you'd look over and there'd be like the main alien or I guess it's not really an alien, the undersea creature from the abyss. He had that one that Mobius designed.
Well, also, I don't know if he was getting ready to hang him up or what he was doing, but all the life masks that he had. Lined up along up the stairs.
Yes.
So,
and then, like I said, going back to the Universal films and then more modern. I remember he talked about he didn't have a lot of Godzilla stuff, but he did have like a Ghidorah head, which was
he had a Ghidorah head, and then he had a 62 Godzilla, which I think was like a model. I don't think it was
okay. But yeah, it was cool to see the original Ghidorah head from the 60s or early 70s, whatever.
But he also had like the original gates from King Kong.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's just like I said, it was just amazing to be there and stuff like that. And
then
so
Dave Allen did I think it was a VW commercial or something where he animated Kong. And he had the Kong. It was actually in a glass container, but
that one,
he had the Kong in the building.
Yeah, right. The giant car, the giant Volkswagen. I was gonna say, I remember when we were there, he talked about he was getting. This was 2002, I believe. He was gearing up to do another Halloween show. They had like stopped doing them because I think permits and all those kind of things are just crazy. But he wanted to do at least one more, and it had been probably 10. 15 years since his last one.
Well, I think it was like just before we got there.
Yeah.
He was having a meeting with everybody about that particular Halloween show. Yeah. And so when we got there, the plans for it were all spread out on the table.
Yes.
It was for the thing from another world. And he was showing us, here's where people come in, and then they're going to come across here, and then each scene is going to happen, as they go across. And he even had somebody dressed up like the James Arness Thing, and then he had a midget. So it was kind of like the electricity would hit him,
thing. Yeah,
he'd kind of duck down, and this midget would be there, and so it looks like he's shrinking. But yeah, that's the one that you helped with, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because he was there talking about it, and they were looking for volunteers, and since I was local, I jumped at the chance, and. Because I'd read about the shows. I knew the previous shows were like legendary since he got a chance to use a lot of real props from the studios and and people like Dennis Muren had worked on them when they were growing up, and then they go on and they're at ILM and you win 12 Oscars, or whatever it is. But it was just like it had this amazing history, and so I knew it was going to be the new one would be fantastic. And so yeah, I basically did things like help build the some of the rooms because they would have the Arctic Outpost. So you have rooms like the science rooms where they got the trays with all the budding, things and doorways, painting, putting up painting walls and putting up pipes for the overhead ceilings and that kind of stuff. And he pulled together again a lot of named people and people who've gone on to do a lot of great stuff. I mean, you got Greg Nicotero as part of the team building like the props, like the giant ice thing that the thing came out of. You had the big block of ice. That was done by K&B, and of course, Nicotero's gone on, and he's already well established by that time, but he's now the guy running much of the Walking Dead franchise these days. And then the main actor playing the commander was Daniel Roebuck, who is a well-established character actor. He was in like things like The Fugitive, The River's Edge with Keanu Reeves, and was a recurring character on Lost and in the first Final Destination. So I mean, well-established in this kind of stuff, and so to have a professional actor playing your lead is a really nice thing, And they would basically guide the audience through, or the attendees through, like a walkthrough maze type thing where they show them the block and the creatures escape. We don't know where it is. There are things, and you're going through and things are hopping out at you. They open the door, the dead dog rolls out, which I think might have been another K&B Nicotero creation. I'm not positive about that, but they had all these things. And then you turn the corner and there's the long hallway with the, where the thing say gets melted down, everything. Great mask. I think that was done by Joe Riley, who was part of the Monster Attack Team guys. That crew. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun. So we worked on that for months. I made a lot of really good friends there. Got to know Bob and his wife Kathy really well. And then the show came and it was a huge hit. And it ran for, I want to say, about a week, leading up to Halloween and a few days after. And great turnout for all of it. But the fun thing was, as it was going on, the actors were trying to mix it up a little bit. So, like, sometimes they would really overreact to stuff just to make it a little more comedic. They find the dead person, they'd be like, no, kind of really overdone. And I think just to keep it fresh for them. So, you'd go through different times and it would have different feel. And it was cool because a lot of industry people showed up for it. I met Frank Darabont when he was standing in line.
Right.
For the show. And that's, the director of The Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption. Yeah. He's the guy that launched the Walking Dead show. Wrote the remake of The Blob. So, I mean, it was really a pleasure to meet him. And then I also got to meet Tom Kenny, who is the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants. And he had worked on the Godzilla cartoon I'd worked on, but we had never met. He was a voice. And so I was introducing him to other people in the crew, and pretty much all the girls asked him to do SpongeBob. So he was doing the voice of everybody, and he was there. I mean, so it was a lot of that kind of stuff. It was very fun. And then after the show, just would visit Bob from time to time. I think you came in a couple times. We went and saw him, and I'd go out to lunch once in a while with him and Kathy. It was kind of here and there. And but one of the really cool things was I had done some programming stuff with the American Cinematheque for stuff at the Egyptian. We had done like a Godzilla 50th anniversary show and brought in guests and things like that. And right before Peter Jackson's King Kong came out, we did a Kong film festival. And we got the original King Kong, we got Mighty Joe Young, we got Son of Kong, and then some other like giant ape movies, things like Conga, and that kind of stuff. But Bob came out as a guest with Terry Moore, who was the lead actress in Mighty Joe Young. And when we did Mighty Joe Young, and they did a Q&A, and I remember Terry Moore because she's such an innocent girl in Mighty Joe Young, and her character Jill. But the real Terry Moore was very, very flamboyant, and she was like one of those ones who would just say something improper just to get a chuckle. Very, very great. I mean, hell of a guest after a show. She was like, and her and Bob had known each other forever, so they did chats and stuff. But again, going to Bob's generosity, he brought the armatures so the people could see them. And then when the show was over, he was talking to people, people were coming and approaching him and talking, and he asked me to hold the Kong armature. So again, that's an honor, So I'm standing there holding it, And I know this is a story I've told you before, but I was sitting there holding it, and a young woman walked up and asked me how much it weighed. So I looked at Bob, and he looked at me, he smiled, and I just handed it to her. And she went, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Someone take a picture. Oh my God, oh my God." Like you never in a million years, like all of us, expected to be holding King Kong in your hands. And so, and the fact it's indestructible, as long as no one steals it, it's not going to get damaged. But I remember things like that. And I remember, he would just invite people to come over and check out the place. He didn't do like 4 Ackerman, where there was the tours. But he would do the like we did, like you did. You reached out and asked if you could come by, and he was like, "Sure, I'll give you a tour." And he would have like groups come by once in a while. When we were doing the Halloween show, we had full access to everything. You could take a break and go play with a prop if you wanted to. you know. Um, and Like I said, I just remember, he was a really nice man, and his wife Kathy was just like him. I mean, that was a perfect pair. They had the similar interests and temperaments, and they were kind of like everybody's the perfect grandparents. It's kind of like what you dream of. And she was interesting. I mean, she had traveled all over the world. She was a really talented photographer. She was showing us photos she took of like safari in Africa, and it was just like you know National Geographic quality photos. So it's you know I remember hearing that after when she passed like 4 years ago, and I think I had heard that Bob was just not the same after that, and um, understandable. I mean, if you're that connected with somebody, you have lives that linked, that's just got to be devastating. So um, I tried to reach out to him when she passed away, but his uh, phone would just go to a voice thing that always said the message thing's full. So it was not able to get a hold of him in the last couple of years. Then I heard his health declined and he'd had a stroke a couple of years back. So, with his age and everything, it's like you knew this was coming, but you didn't want it to. You really didn't want it to. And so, and so it's kind of, a lot of good memories,
Well, I know. I think once Kathy passed, I think everything Bob kind of shut down, and everything kind of. I know Greg Nicotero was helping him out, and I think they kind of rallied the wagons around, and kind of kept things on the down low after that. But
yeah, it's understandable. His health was not great when we were doing the Halloween show. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but he would have like some breathing issues once in a while. And he'd have to go sit down for a while. And Kathy was zooming all over the place, so I actually had assumed clearly wrongly that he would probably go first. And so I was really surprised when she passed away. And But just they said I'd heard stuff. I went to the Godzilla X Kong premiere in LA and or in Hollywood, ran into Rick Baker. Rick obviously is an old friend of his. So I introduced myself and told him what I had done, and we chatted for a while. And he was one to inform me that Bob had recently had a stroke, and that people like Greg were like caring for him and keeping an eye on things, and
that's good because when Forey was going through his health issues, I don't think he had as many friends rallying around him. And some people took advantage of the situation, and wasn't good. But
yeah, that's the problem. You get people that go in there and they just they see that collection, they want to pick it clean, And so I'm glad that people like Greg and other close friends like that are going to take care of this, make sure that things go as well as possible. I got to say too, because a story that I hadn't brought up before, but Bob got to be really good friends with Peter Jackson, and he has a cameo. He and Kathy have a cameo in Jackson's Kong. Right when Kong bursts out of the theater in New York, you see the two of them standing there with that shocked expression, as Kong starts to rampage. But like I said, because of like their connection, Peter has the other King Kong armature. So, and Bob had the one, but they I think they featured Bob when they did the extras for one of the Kong sets. Blu-ray DVD releases. Like they talked about Bob's Armature. I think they showed it there. Um, and then Peter would send like Bob and Kathy like all kinds of stuff. So I had visited the house one time, and there were just boxes and boxes of unopened Kong statues and merchandise that had been done by Weta. All the stuff they did for them. And then another time I was there, Peter had sent them costumes, like full costumes from the Lord of the Rings. So they had Hobbit stuff. So I actually tried on a Hobbit cloak and found out it was very scratchy. So I can't imagine the actors wearing that for 18 months where they were filming the 3 movies, running around. But it was interesting, like, hey, this is the actual costume worn in the movie by Galadriel or Frodo or whatever. So that was really impressive, and just kind of again showed the connections he had with people. People
definitely
send him stuff because he was such a nice guy, and I think in this they wanted to be part of the collection. Once you get that rolling, other people wanted to be a part of it.
Hey, I'm a nice guy. Somebody send me stuff.
Exactly. I want to say for people who aren't really familiar with Bob, uh, uh, if you have the Alien quadrilogy Blu-ray DVD sets or whatever, he's featured in that because they came and showed all the props. He did like a little explanation, so they have like a little extra feature just about Bob's collection.
That's cool.
And
I have that. I'll have to go back and check it out.
It's really cool, and you see his enthusiasm, about just his energy, and and he's just like a big kid, basically, And then, like I said, I think he's featured in the extras for the when they re-released the original King Kong for DVD, Blu-ray, whatever, like 2005 to tie in with the release of the Jackson film. He's featured in that as well, and he did audio commentaries. He's on the audio commentary for Godzilla Raids Again because he was.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve Ruffer brought him in when we were working on those.
Right.
He was working on. Bob was working on, I think, Attack of the Saucermen, and they were filming an explosion like in a warehouse, special effects miniature, and they hid behind a crate, and the crate had a Godzilla suit in it for that Toho had shipped over. Because remember, initially they were going to film extra scenes for the American release of Godzilla Raids Again. So, so Bob had got to see an original Godzilla suit in 56, 57, somewhere around there.
I'm surprised it didn't make its way into his collection at some point. Who knows where that went?
So yeah, he had no idea. It was just there at the studio, So Steve knew about that. So Steve brought him in. And he told the story on the audio commentary. So he got to be a part of that kind of stuff too. So.
No, that's cool. I think he was that first time we were there. He mentioned he had just done an audio commentary for, I think it was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
That would totally make sense.
So yeah,
just being a historian and again having some of the props from the Nautilus and those kinds of things.
So yeah, no, all was very cool. But we have to actually let Larry and Karen back in on the conversation here at some point.
Okay. So yeah, I could have talked forever about Bob. He said him and Kathy both. Just I love them. And I'm sorry they're gone. And I'm glad I have a lot of good memories with them.
Yeah.
Glad you got to come down and we could do stuff with them and everything like that.
No, I mean it was a shock when I heard the news, but I mean the world was better with him in it, and so he's definitely left his mark and his memory in a lot of people's minds. So,
and I'll reach out to like some of the people I worked with on the Halloween show, like in the coming weeks and months, and just find out like what they might, if this collection is going to go, on display now, or if they're going to auction pieces off. I don't know how that's going to work, but there are some beautiful pieces there, and I hope that they're in a way that people can enjoy them. Like I said, obviously Bob didn't do a museum display, but he was very open to let people come in and see them, touch them, play with them, whatever they can be. So I hope that continues somewhere.
And we're back. We hope you enjoyed that tribute reel that we put together with some of our friends. Bob was just a great guy all around, and I mean, got along with everyone. I mentioned subscribing to YouTube and commenting. If you have a personal experience or story with Bob Burns, please share that with us. We'd love to read your experience, and we'd appreciate it. At this time, we usually have our censor sweep, but Bob and Karen have some cool stuff related to Bob Burns and his basement. So let's start with Bob. And
Yeah, I basically, if you want to know more about Bob Burns, obviously I showed the DVD of Beast Wishes, and the Blu-ray had just come out like last week. Also, this is from McFarland Press, and this is by Randy Palmer. It's Paul Blaisdell, Monster Maker. And it's the whole story of Paul Blaisdell, which is a cool book in and of itself. But Bob Burns is basically riddled throughout this book because he worked with Paul Blaisdell quite a bit, helping him in making all of his monsters. I also have, and I think it's still in print, It Came from Bob's Basement. And this book basically has pictures of a lot of the props and a lot of the things that are in his collection. There's Glenn Strange's boots from Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein. Boots on the ground. And there's quite a few cool items. This particular one says, "To Bob, Beast Wishes from Bob Burns." Autographed. And then I covered this in our magazine episode, but if you haven't seen our magazine episode, and you really should because it was a good one, I have this book, big, thick, hardcover. Basically, it reprints all the issues of Fantastic Monsters of Filmland, which Bob Burns wrote and produced along with Paul Blaisdell and a couple others. And it's cool because back then, when people did fanzines, it was like whatever information they could scare up or whatever they assume was done in these films. But Paul and Bob worked on a lot of these films and were around a lot of these films, so they know exactly what went into them. So very good book, very educational if you want to know more about the film industry and as it was back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s. So definitely check all that out if you want to know more about Bob.
Very cool. Karen, you got one of those books, don't you? I have nada.
Well, I have
nothing this go round.
I have the Bob's Basement book, just like our Bob, and the Beast Wishes DVD and the Men in Suits DVD. So I won't bother with any of that, but I will say another shout out to the Starlog, and this is Starlog number 18. If anybody's looking for it. So this was, again, December 1978. Now, I know the archive online. Is it archive online? They used to have all the Starlog issues online. If you
like archive.org, right?
Yeah, archive.org.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob. They used to have all the Starlog issues. I don't know if they still do. This was a few years ago, and I haven't checked. But that might be a resource if you want to read the article. It's a really great article, a lot of great pictures. So I would, highly recommend it if you're interested in those Halloween shows. But yeah, all the stuff that Bob already mentioned, is a great way to see, what Bob Burns did for everybody. And I'm so glad to hear that Greg Nicotero is going to be looking after everything because, you just worry about these pieces of our history. And I know it sounds, to maybe outsiders, it might sound silly, but, these movies are important to us. And a lot of this stuff is very fragile and it needs to be taken care of. And you'd hate to see it, either stolen or auctioned off and just put in somebody's collection, never to be seen again. So I hope that some way maybe these things can still be shared with the public, but at least we know that someone responsible we'll be taking care of it. So that's good news. But yeah, very sad to hear about Bob's passing. Just a unique individual.
He lived a good life, a full life.
Yeah.
He really left an imprint on those that he met and befriended, and I'm glad his legacy will live on.
Yeah, if you look up interviews on YouTube with Bob, and a constant theme is he was offered a lot of money for some of these things, especially like the time machine. Somebody wanted to buy the time machine, and they said, what's your price? He's like, my son wants that time machine. What's your price? And he said, I don't have one. He goes, everybody's got a price. And he's like, well, you met someone who does not have a price. I don't sell any of this. He goes, it's here. I enjoy it. I let people enjoy it. And I'm not here to make money off of it. And then another theme he would always say is, I'm the luckiest man on the planet. So he definitely enjoyed his life, enjoyed what he did. And God, rest in peace, really. I don't think he was really ever the same after Kathy passed away in 2001. I'm sorry, 2021.
21.
And because the two of them were just, you want to talk about a storybook marriage. It's like they were together over 60 years, and both shared the same love for film. And like I said, I think when she left, it crushed him. And so he's back with her again, and I'm sure very happy. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I say, he led a good life. I mean, a fun person and just a great legacy. So, on that note, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We'll have a new episode. I think we're going to have some guests. So stay tuned. We're going to surprise you.
Might surprise us.
Talk about a little something, something.
Quite possibly. But we
rid of us.
appreciate... What's that, Walker?
You can't get rid of us.
Why would they want to? Welcoming us into their phones and their homes. Anyway, you guys take care of yourselves. Stay safe. It's a crazy world we're living in. So come back to Planet 8 where it's not so crazy. Take care, and Happy New Year to you all. On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.